Hi everybody, welcome to Mile High Mentors. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. Really appreciate it. My name is Connor Doobie and I am your host, as well as your bridge between the millennial generation and the generation before us, the generation of business leaders, entrepreneurs, industry experts. So I am here doing the show interviewing mentors to help pass down that knowledge and pass down that flame to the generation that is going to be the next global problem solvers. And that is why we're here doing Mile High Mentors. And I want to give a huge shout out to Denver Open Media for sponsoring the show and for helping others as well produce really great content out of the studio here. Be sure to follow us on Instagram for behind the scenes content. That is at Mile High Mentors on Instagram. I have a really awesome guest today. Her name is Jill Tejan. She is a writer, blogger, author, as well as a blogger for the Huffington Post and an engineer for a good part of her career, and has had a really significant career helping and empowering women to be successful in their own lives as well. And Jill, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really nice to have you. For our audience that's unfamiliar with you, can you give us a little bit of background, maybe starting from your childhood, even kind of back from your younger years? Give us a little bit of a premise here.
All right. Well, I'm the oldest of 4 children. I grew up in Hampton, Virginia. For any of your listeners who have seen the movie Hidden Figures, that's where my father worked his entire career from 1943 to 1986. And so I grew up the oldest of 4. All of 4 of us were expected to go to college. We were expected to go in-state within Virginia. And I wanted to go to the University of Virginia, which fortunately for me admitted women for the first time as undergraduate students in the fall of 1970,
right,
under order of the United States District Court.
Wow.
So I'm in the 3rd class of women that attended the University of Virginia as undergraduates.
Mm-hmm.
I started as a math major. No one actually told me that with the aptitudes and abilities that I had, that I should consider engineering as a career. But fortunately, I found it. I found engineering. I transferred.
Why? How did you find engineering? What was like?
I saw there were other people in my class.
Mm-hmm.
There were women on my hall that were in the engineering program. Many of my male friends were in the engineering program. I saw what kind of classes they were taking, and that's what I wanted to do.
And you like that stuff?
That's what I liked.
So your peers around you, they really influenced you into going into the engineering field?
Yes.
Or was it more of like a mentor of your own? Was there somebody of like an older stature that had kind of pushed or given you the tools to have interest in that kind of stuff?
My father was an engineer,
yeah,
but he did not suggest to me that I should consider engineering.
Uh-huh.
He was afraid I would do the teenager 180-degree, whatever you suggest the teenager does, the opposite thing. But that was my sister.
So it worked out well.
It worked
out. He didn't flip the 180,
and
you ended up going into it. That's
so
a pretty good strategy.
I transferred to engineering. It was absolutely where I needed to be, and it's also one of the primary catalysts for why I've now spent over 40 years advocating for women and men, actually, to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and math, what's normally called STEM,
mm-hmm.
because I didn't get that encouragement, and I want young women and young men to get that encouragement. In fact, I'm even planning to go to Africa in the fall to encourage African young men and young women and to help the teachers with hands-on activities to encourage the students to pursue STEM careers.
Wow.
And then when I was graduating from college, it was time to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very fortunate that I ended up at Duke Power Company in Charlotte, North Carolina,
mm-hmm.
an electric utility today known as Duke Energy, and I was in their planning department. So I have spent 40 plus years as a utility planner, which means I help plan what the new power plants need to be, and then I help plan how the existing power plants should operate.
Wow.
It was a fabulous career. I used computer models, I wrote reports, I was trained as an expert witness. I've spent a lot of time as an expert witness. And then I sit on a utility corporate board in Georgia.
Still to this day?
Yes, I've
Very
been on
cool.
that board for quite a number of years.
Wow.
And what I say to friends is that I expect to be on the board for a little while longer, particularly since right now I'm the only woman on 3 affiliated boards. And they have to have at least one.
Right, right, yeah.
And then along the way I became very, very active in the Society of Women Engineers. I was national president in 91, 92.
Wow. How did you get involved with them?
I found the Society of Women Engineers at a card table in the gymnasium at North Carolina State University when Duke Power sent me to be in that gymnasium to recruit engineers for them. On-campus recruiting is what it's called. I saw them at the table, I asked them what they were, they told me, I joined. I became very active when I moved to Denver. And then I was elected to the national board and served as national president. Actually, I still serve on a committee. I was on a phone call yesterday.
Really? Wow.
For the organization. And through that organization, I started nominating women for awards. My first successful nomination.
Now, what does that look like? What does that mean, nominating women for awards? From that particular entity that you're working with, they were nominating women?
I was nominating women on their behalf start with.
Okay.
Now I nominate women on just people I know or women through that organization for a variety of awards. In the engineering field, particularly in the technology fields, not very many women have won the very high, prestigious awards. It's very important, as far as I'm concerned, for those women to be nominated for those awards so that young people, particularly if you have a website and you're looking at a website, for example, of the National Inventors Hall of Fame, and you're an 8-year-old girl, you need to see that there are women that have been inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. That's one of the organizations I nominate for. I nominate for the National Medal of Technology, the National Medal of Science. Those are awards that the President of the United States presents at the White House to the recipients. And to halls of fame in Colorado, the National Women's Hall of Fame, the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame. I've also nominated in Maryland and Delaware. And that actually all started through the Society of Women Engineers.
That's incredible. How would someone because what you just said was really interesting, and how does someone who's listening to this, how would they potentially get involved in that organization?
Well, anyone can nominate for almost any of these organizations. The nomination forms are online on their websites. So if you know someone who, maybe somebody's mother, needs to be nominated for the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame, those nominations are actually due August 1st, 2017. So now is the time. The nomination form is online. You download the nomination form, you fill it out. You send it in. The public is asked to submit nominations.
Interesting. Okay. You were a part of an effort, and when we first met and talked about this really blew me away. You're part of an effort to help women get on currency.
Right.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
In 2014, I was approached by the organization which was called WomenOn20s.org. They, which were really, at that point, from what I can determine, about 2 people, who had decided that their grassroots advocacy was going to be to get women on United States paper currency.
What started this?
I don't know what their genesis was, except that there's no women on the money.
Yeah.
And
which I didn't even know that, by the way.
No, there are no women on paper currency. There was a
currently or ever, because
I think Martha Washington might have been on paper currency. I know she was on some kind of money very early on.
Right.
Sacagawea, except the correct pronunciation is Sacagawea, was on a dollar coin.
Sacagawea.
Susan B. Anthony was on a coin. And then the Statue of Liberty, which is not actually a real woman, is on the money.
Right.
And so if you are thinking about role models, if you are thinking about gender equity, if you are thinking about mentoring, then it's important to see women in places where they need to be. And,
right.
And if every individual who is anywhere on a wall of fame, a series of photographs in an engineering school lobby, in the entryway at the IBM Watson Center in upstate New York, at Medtronic when you go in and you see it, and every picture that's there is male. And every time you pick up any kind of paper money in the U.S., it's male. Then maybe that has to change.
Yeah.
If women, Janet Rankin actually said, she was the first woman elected to the United States Congress in 1916 from Montana. She said, we're half the people. We should be half the Congress.
Right.
So if there's no women on money, that's a first step toward helping to rectify this. I was actually on a radio program for the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, and
yes, the BBC.
BBC.
I think I'm slightly familiar with the BBC.
That BBC. Well, I wasn't
That's
sure
incredible.
all your listeners would be.
Yeah.
And somebody said to me, well, putting Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill isn't going to fix gender and racial inequality.
Right.
And I will agree completely with that statement. But if you do not start taking steps, then you never get there. You have to take a first step. You have to take a second step. And so women on 20s actually had originally identified maybe 100 women that could potentially be on the $20 bill.
When was this? When they
2014.
Okay.
And then
this is when you had started and you were trying to determine.
And I was on the advisory board.
Okay.
For the effort. I helped write the bios that ended up on their website.
Which advisory board was pushing this?
The advisory board of womenon20s.org.
Okay, gotcha.
The grassroots effort.
Okay.
I was on their advisory board. I helped write their bios, and then they did voting in March of 2015. And that voting process led to the selection of Harriet Tubman as the woman who should be on the United States $20 bill.
Right.
Rosie Rios, who was at that point treasurer of the United States, I invited her to come to Seneca Falls, New York, the birthplace of women's rights and the home of the National Women's Hall of Fame, in 2015 when I was CEO of the National Women's Hall of Fame. She came and she did a town hall meeting and took input. And then in either March or April of 2016, the announcement came out of the United States Department of Treasury that the $20 bill would have Harriet Tubman. On the back of the $10 bill was going to be the suffragists, 5 of them, particularly Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, Sojourner Truth, Alice Paul, and Lucretia Mott. And then on the back of the $5 bill would be Martin Luther King Jr., Eleanor Roosevelt, and Marian Anderson.
And what you're referring to is signatures on the bill, is that right?
I'm talking about pictures.
Pictures, they're actual photographs on the bill.
Drawings and or photographs.
Okay.
And some of them are early, but yes.
Okay.
Their faces.
Yeah.
Their faces will be on the money.
Yeah.
Harriet Tubman's face will be on the front of the $20 bill.
And that's the next round of currency, is that right?
And
when does that start circulating then?
Currency takes a long time.
Does it?
The redesign the last time of the $20 bill took 14 years. So what the Department of Treasury is saying is that the design will be unveiled in 2020, which is the 100th anniversary of women getting the right to vote in the U.S.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then the actual money will get issued later.
Wow, that's incredible. It's funny, the last round of currency, the 100, it's total side note, but the 100 on there literally looks like something that you'd, in the Word document, and you'd like, so there's all these funny jokes about, President Obama just like pulled out a Word document and like used some sort of like script or whatever. It's kind of goofy. But so there's going to be several women that will be coming out on that next round of currency. A couple different.
It'll be 8.
Eight different women.
1 on the 20, 5 on the 10, and 2 on the 5.
So having women that have had significance and like you mentioned something that it's not going to change the current state of where women are and where they're going to be, but it's a next step. And so part of that effort is getting them recognized, their actual faces. It seems like their photos in places where it's particularly male dominant. Do you think that we are really is the engineering field and the fields that you're in, is there a big transition happening, or are we still kind of where we were back when you had started?
We're not back where I was when I started. From 1972 was the first year that the percentage of women receiving bachelor's degrees in engineering in the U.S. reached 1%. From 1972 to 1985, the percentage increased from 1% to 15.5%.
Okay.
But we've never yet gotten above 20%. So I would argue that we haven't made any progress since 1985.
Wow.
We're at about
that's pretty significant.
That's 30 plus years.
Yeah, that's pretty. Why do you think that is?
There are societal barriers. There are all kinds of issues related to women in STEM, minorities in STEM also. There are quite a number of papers and reports and books that have been written on this subject. And this is, I actually call it Jill's theory, because there's so much research on this topic. But the way I boil it down to is that there was a Harris poll done in 1998 that said that almost 3/4 of American women don't know what engineers are or what engineers do, and over half of American men don't know what engineers are or what engineers do. So if those are the parents and the teachers and the principals and the guidance counselors and the parents of friends and the peers of their parents that don't know what engineers are or what engineers do, then there's no real encouragement or discussion of that possibility as a career. In addition, girls, when they are surveyed, say they select a career as a choice. Men generally, at least historically, have selected a career for the monetary rewards that come with it. Girls make a choice. They want something that makes a difference in the world and provides value. And if everyone who is advising them, or almost everyone who is advising them, don't know what engineers are or what engineers do, how can they determine what the value is and how to make a difference? And as I like to tell people when they ask me what my job is, my job as an engineer is to keep the lights on. And that's value.
That's a pretty important job.
That's value.
Because we would probably all lose our minds without the lights.
Actually,
I know I'm slightly scared of the dark, so.
The studies that have come out are actually terrifying in terms of what percentage of Americans would die.
Without lights?
Without electricity
Just
for
electricity.
a period of months.
Wow. That's
because everything we do is dependent on electricity.
Right.
And you actually can't pump gasoline without electricity, and so our food couldn't be delivered.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, just basic stuff.
Yeah. Not a lot of us are good at hunting and gathering so much.
And we don't necessarily live in an environment where that's possible.
Right.
So
we are in downtown Denver. For anyone listening to this, you know, we are in downtown Denver. Maybe you have to drive a few miles up in the mountains, but not so close around. They do have macaroons though.
Macaroons, good.
We could
live off macaroons for a while
until
they ran out.
Yeah, until they run out.
Which is estimated, by the way, to be 3 days.
Yeah.
That the supermarkets would be cleaned out in 3 days. Then we would starve. Anyway.
Which, by the way, macaroons. Give us a little info. Where's the macaroon spot? Because when we talked last time, macaroons are like your. Is that your favorite?
Those I can't eat gluten.
Yeah.
So D-Bar has macaroons, French macaroons, which are made without wheat.
Yeah. So if you're in Denver, check out D-Bar for macaroons.
Absolutely.
It's the place to go.
Absolutely.
So how do we take that? How do we shift that mindset around? How do we we better educate so that we're passing the torch down to the young women that don't know about engineering, but if they did know it existed, it'd be something that they would probably participate in.
Well, I've been working on that, as have many, many other people and many other organizations for 40, 50, 60 years. And if we knew exactly what the issue was, I think we could have at least addressed it to some extent by now. There are very significant societal attitudes, societal barriers.
Do you think us as a society, we're still not progressed to the point where we really do acknowledge that women could equally be just as successful in these types of industries as men? Is that really still our mindset?
It's not just these particular industries.
Yeah.
Our mindset is that for women.
Just women in general.
And minorities. It's the same mindset.
So you think that in roughly about 30 years since that, there hasn't been a whole lot of progression.
Correct.
In that. Interesting.
Correct.
And do you think it's just educating? Not enough people know?
No, there are still very significant
societal
barriers and attitudes. I mean, it's the same thing with women and minorities in decision-making responsibilities on corporate boards, as CEOs in the C-suites, which are the senior management levels,
right.
Hospital administration, the partners in law firms and accounting firms. It's very widespread.
Right. Is it because they don't maybe feel the skill sets are there as much with women? I'm sure you've thought about this. Why? Because in my personal experience, I sell to a lot of people within these industries, and I don't know, it's hard to believe that an executive or CEO, a man in one of these higher up C-level roles would genuinely look at a resume of a woman and look at a resume of a man, and they have the same exact skill sets, and would toss out the woman just because she's a woman. That's hard for me to believe. In 2017, that's very difficult.
There's a study that's been done. It's, I think, at the University of Wisconsin, and they did exactly that. It's exactly the same resume, but one has a woman's name on it and one has a man's name on it. The woman is ranked lower in all skills.
For STEM type career?
Any career.
Yeah, okay.
But the woman, even psychologists.
Huh.
The woman is ranked lower across the board, is offered a job that pays less, is deemed to be less skilled than the man. I'm going to give you another example.
Yeah.
This happens to be music. So in the book Blink, by Malcolm Gladwell, there's an example that's given of auditions. This is called unconscious bias. There's a name given to it. We're not even aware that we're doing it.
Yeah.
If the group that is auditioning a musician for a symphony orchestra can see the musician, the men are selected over the women almost all the time.
Really?
If you put a screen up and you mute you put carpeting on the floor so you can't hear the person walk in, so that you only can rate them on their musical ability, women are selected 5 times more.
Based on music ability,
but based on music ability, when you can't see who's playing behind the screen.
So it's still that unconscious.
It's called unconscious bias.
And that is the driver here.
It's real. It's why, although I can't remember what the statistics are, but a percentage of American males are over 6 feet. But the percentage of CEOs who are over 6 feet is significantly larger than the way they are found in the general population.
That's really interesting.
Because we, as a society, view tall men as leaders.
Yeah.
And one of the presidents, and I can't remember, I think it was
Abraham
Harrison.
Lincoln?
No, I think it was Harrison. Was 5'7".
And
they called him a little dog in newspapers. And his only issue was that he was 5'7" and not 6 feet tall.
Right.
Oh no, we have very strong biases. And so
wow.
for people who are listening
yeah.
to this discussion, I guess one very important thing is A, to be aware of it, And then B, to make sure that if you are in a group, say a woman or a minority or a short man or a short woman, which I am, that you are aware of all of these biases so that you can work to overcome them. Because getting a mentor who may not be aware of them.
Right.
I mean, a man who is a white male who is 6 feet 2 inches tall has never experienced any of these issues.
Mm-hmm. So it's hard to resonate there.
Well,
right?
He doesn't even know that they exist, maybe.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't believe that the experience that I have as a 5'2" woman in engineering is different than the experience that he has.
Right.
And I've actually had people tell me that in 2016. But Jill, I mean, this is one of the boards I sit on. This man actually said to me, Jill, I don't make any differential evaluation of a woman engineer or a man engineer in my hiring. And I said to him, good for you. Actually, I don't believe him, but because it's
just
unconscious.
Also unconscious.
It's unconscious. He's not even thinking about it.
Yeah. Do you see that there's a way to shift that consciousness through education? Do you think educating is
it's educating,
the thing to do that?
It's like in an Alcoholics Anonymous program.
Right.
In a 12-step program.
Right.
The first step is awareness.
Right.
If people are now aware, and by the way, I do it. I have unconscious biases. I will admit it immediately.
Well, it's impossible. I mean, when I think it's just our primal thing to survive. Like, we have to be able to categorize threats or not threats.
Do it in less than 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But once you know that that's what you're doing, that's awareness. That's the first step to changing your behavior. I'm going to give you another example. My husband has crap on his side of the garage. I do not. I want to
sparkly clean.
No, it's not sparkly clean. That's
dirty
not
man
the point.
Mess on this side.
I can put my car in the garage. I want that garage door closing behind me. I'm a 5'2" woman.
Especially with the hail that we had the other day.
Well,
that's
hail,
probably
yes,
a
of
good thing.
But he wouldn't. I mean, he would not even think about it. I went on a business trip with a male colleague. To Winnipeg. I don't know anything about Winnipeg. He went out for a walk at night around the hotel. Not even in my realm of possibility would I ever consider walking outside at night by myself in a place I don't know.
Right.
And so if you haven't ever thought about those kinds of things, then you're not even aware of your thinking process and what your biases are and how you're processing that information and the decisions that you're making about people based on how they look.
Do you, in your speaking and doing this podcast with me and everything, and someone who's listening, what can they do to help with this effort? What can they do? If this is if they feel passionate about this the same way that you do, how can they get involved to help shift that unconscious bias that we have so we can continue to progress as a society and create equality between men and women?
I have a list of things that people can do.
A checklist?
Yeah, I have a checklist.
Where can people find that?
I will provide it to you, the presentation that I make on unconscious bias.
Sure.
Because it has steps people can take in the hiring process, in the evaluation process, in their minds as to how they look at the decisions that they make that can help alleviate some of these unconscious biases. And there are also books that you can read. Two that I've read recently. One is called Whistling Vivaldi, which is really very good. It's about stereotype threat and how people,
Whistling what?
Vivaldi.
Vivaldi, okay.
And the other one is called The Only Woman in the Room. I've read both of those recently.
And those are top books you'd recommend for our audience listening?
Those are the ones that I can remember, and I've just very recently read them. Whistling Vivaldi, stereotype threat. There are actually studies that show if you tell a group of women before they take a math test that women don't do well on math tests, then they score significantly lower than a group of women who is not told that before they take a math test.
Wow.
So because it's the stereotype threat.
Yeah.
And Whistling Vivaldi, the reason why it's titled that is that a man is walking in his neighborhood in Chicago. He's an African-American man in an upscale neighborhood.
Yep.
And when people see him, they cross the street and go to the other side. But if he whistles Vivaldi as he's walking, they then interpret who they're going to meet differently, and they don't react in the same way.
Huh. Just those very simple things.
Because who would know enough to whistle Vivaldi unless they were educated and they were cultured?
Right. So kind of pulling from both ends, educating, but also helping women poise themselves in a good position to be champions in these industries. And so it's got to kind of come from both sides, right? It can't just come from just educating executives.
The women
there has to be
the
both.
women are actually there. But what I will say,
you think that women are there enough?
I think women are there.
With enough of a voice?
No.
That
not enough of a voice.
Okay.
But what I will say to anyone who is listening, that men already know how to work together. Women have to learn how to do that. Women have to learn to support other women all the time.
Yeah.
Women don't behave that way now.
Right.
And that is actually a detriment.
Yeah.
To advancement for women, for opportunities for them across the board in senior management positions, on corporate boards, in wherever they are.
Well, I think we have a slight opportunity to do that right now. I went out to the community of millennials and explained to them that you were going to be on the show today, and we had collected a couple questions if you'd like to answer those for us. So our first question comes from Anna out of Catalonia, Spain. She is 27 years old, and her question for you is, how does a person exactly know if he/she found his/her passion? Also, once you think you found it, what about it if you do not have the skills, knowledge, and preparation, so your passion becomes a big challenge and struggle? She basically wants to know, will I achieve the same success I want, or will my success be inhibited by those who do have the knowledge, skills, and preparation?
Connor, you know that I have a book that's called Her Story, A Timeline of the Women Who Changed America. And when people ask me, what are the commonalities of the women who are in that book? I say that it's passion, determination, and persistence. And I believe that those three categories are skills that everyone can use for success. Passion, determination, and persistence. How do you find your passion? Oh my gosh, it's been quite a path for me to find my passion. But when you have really found it, you know. And that might just sound so weird to your listeners, but it is really that simple.
Yeah, that intuition.
It's in your gut, and you just know. And if you don't have the skills or the knowledge or the preparation, if it is your passion, then you have to get them, because that is what you have to do. That's what passion, the way I've heard it explained by an opera director, he doesn't do opera because he wants to. He does opera because he has to. But what he also told me when I spoke to him recently was that that's not enough. You have to keep on working, keep on trying, keep on honing your talent and ability.
It's nothing without that persistence.
No, it's the determination and the persistence.
How do you think mentors like yourself play a role in facilitating that for millennials?
Well, sometimes it can be a suggestion of what knowledge and skills you might need to have. Sometimes it's simply telling the millennial who says, well, it didn't work the first time. Well, you have to try it again.
Right.
I mean, Thomas Edison took 1,000 times to develop the incandescent light bulb.
Yeah.
He didn't stop after the first time. He didn't stop after the second time. He didn't stop after the 100th time. He didn't stop after the 500th time.
Right.
He was going to invent the incandescent light bulb.
Yeah.
So
and what was it? I found a million ways that it was wrong, or
right.
that,
and
and
that's
that's
what he
how
said.
I found it was
he said,
right.
all I did, it wasn't a failure.
Yeah.
It was just another way that it didn't work.
Right.
And so you have to keep on trying, you have to keep on going. And if it's your passion, I mean, you will climb every mountain that is put in front of you. You will go over every obstacle because that is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes you're going to be sitting, feeling sorry for yourself because something isn't working. And you pick yourself back up and you try something else, just like Thomas Edison. And, A didn't work and B didn't work and C didn't work and you try something else.
Just keep rocking and rolling.
You have to.
You have to.
You have to.
Yeah.
There's really no alternative. And if it's your passion, you will do it because it's your passion. And if you don't want to do it and it's making you sick or tired or whatever, then you probably haven't found your passion yet.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And that seems very clear across all mentors that I've talked with and asked, is they feel very similar to that, is find it and pursue it and then pursue it and then pursue it and then pursue it and pursue it and pursue it. It may be 20 years down the road, but 20 years of persistence and hitting that's going to turn you over. People have done amazing, incredible things that were deemed completely impossible because of that.
And going back, you're reminding me, there used to be Dear Abby and Ann Landers, the advice columnists, and somebody wrote in and said, I want to go to medical school, but I'm 36 years old, and it's going to take me 7 years to complete medical school, and I'll be 43.
Yeah.
And whoever it was, the advice columnist's response was, how old will you be in 7 years if you don't go to medical school?
True. That's a really good point. So one last question here from Marjorie. This comes from Marjorie Davis. She's 25 and from Fort Collins, Colorado. And her question to you is, what are the changes that you are seeing in this industry? Sorry, this question's worded kind of weird, so I'm trying to figure out a better way to cue this. But in terms of entrepreneurship, she's curious, how do you view the current entrepreneurship landscape in your industries? Do you think that it's becoming saturated?
No, I don't think it's becoming saturated because I'm 62 years old. And what I know is that there is this huge pig in the python in demographics of the baby boomer generation. And I think there are tremendous opportunities for everyone that's younger, the millennials, the Gen X, the Gen Y, everyone, because in spite of the fact that baby boomers think we're going to live forever, we're actually not.
We may have the technology tomorrow.
Who knows?
Who knows?
But the odds are not good.
Right.
And so and the world is also aging. I mean, the U.S. is aging, the world is aging, the developing countries are aging. There are going to be tremendous opportunities. In fact, today, there are already opportunities for people in the entrepreneur space that have job titles that didn't even exist. Certainly 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, there wasn't social media. I mean, the internet, I remember using the internet for the first time in a very unwieldy, unmanageable, unusable state in about 1992 or 1993. So in the past 25 years, things that just are second nature today. I got my first microwave. I mean, there are all kinds of things that have happened. I mean, when I tell people, we now have these smartphones. But when I was in college, I actually used a key punch machine to punch IBM punch cards, which nobody in the millennial generation even knows what I'm talking about. There are the pace of technology, the pace of change, the opportunities that are going to arise. No, I do not believe the entrepreneurial market is saturated. I don't think it's saturated. There might be markets in which it's saturated.
Right.
But not in terms of technology moving forward.
Yeah, by any means.
No,
and
not even close.
I really agree with you too. I think that's really interesting. I think our generation too, like entrepreneurship is really a cool thing because it's very glamorized now in some sense. And so for someone, perhaps, maybe Marjorie, she's seeing this. We see it on social media.
Sure.
We see these people that have businesses
Right.
when in reality they may not be making a dime, but they're labeling themselves as entrepreneurs. So I can see where that makes sense, and seeing that it feels like entrepreneurship is saturated and it's a better option to go, work for a company and pursue that route. So I think.
Well, I think the statistics say that people who are graduating from college right now can expect to have 5 to 7 different careers over the course of their life. Plus, by the way, those people are also expected to live to be about 95 or 100 years old.
Right.
So there are many
So there's more
years,
career changes happening
more
with
career
us.
changes, and so there will be many different opportunities to try things. You can go to work for a corporation. You can try something on your own. You can go work for a university. You can go work for the state government or the federal government. There are many different opportunities that will present themselves, and this generation really gets to choose what they want to do when.
Mm-hmm. Well, Marjorie and Anna, really appreciate the questions and getting those submitted, and thank you so much for joining in with us. Really appreciate your time. It's been incredible having you here. How can people find you and contact you if something that you said today piqued interest? And we talked about something that I really want you to get out. What is the next big thing for you?
Well, I'm writing 2 books, Her Story Africa and Her Story at the Movie, as follow-ups to Her Story, A Timeline of the Women Who Changed America. What I told you I wanted to do is I want to do a TED Talk.
Yep.
I really, really do. And I can be reached. I have 2 websites, www.techspeakinginc.com, www.herstoryatimeline.com, and email jill@herstoryatimeline.com.
Awesome. And we'll get all those links in the show notes and everything like that. Again, really appreciate it. And folks, thank you so much for listening today and watching. That was Mile High Mentors. If you'd like to submit any questions, feel free to go do that on Instagram at Mile High Mentors, as well as you can email us at milehighmentors.com. Big thank you to Denver Open Media, and we will look forward to our next episode.